I am so grateful to surrender all of those rules that I thought mattered once upon a time. So, this talk was actually titled Unwritten more than a year ago. And at the time it was titled, it was being based on a song by Natasha Bedingfield, who it was a beautiful song about writing your own story, about knowing that you get to write it and that your day starts today, that your life starts today. And again, if you want to make God laugh, tell her what your plans were. So what it occurs to me is that a lot of people are flailing about because we don't have a rule book or an instruction manual on how to do quarantine. And so it reminds me of a time back at the public defender, which, I mean, you knew it was Ghana, right? That's where all my good stories come from. I was working for the public defender in San Diego, and this will tickle the kids, we were actually still using paper for all of our notes and our legal stuff. We hadn't put it all online. We didn't have tablets to run around with and keep notes during court. And so what happened was we had to take all of that old paper and put it online and scan it in. So I got asked to create a department, an entire department within the Office of the Public Defender that took all our old paper and put it into a digital format so that it was searchable, and it was all of these things that make life so easy now. And at first I was a little intimidated because I had to learn how to use the machine that they bought specifically for this project. And then I had to figure out how to make it work so that I could train other people. The challenge being that I didn't know how to make it work. There was no instruction manual because no one had done this before. And finally, Spirit shared with me that because there was no instruction manual, however I did it became the right way to do it. And if I wrote it down, then it became policy, and other people would do it just the way I had. And that was liberating, that was empowering, that was fun, because you know how I am when I get petty power. And so what I would invite you to think about, okay, this is a moment in which I'm remembering that I have transcended my Catholic girl childhood and I cannot sit in a chair normally anymore. I think that might be the longest I've gone in 20 years, sitting regular in a chair without tucking my feet up. So I invite you to transcend some rules during this time. I invite you to let go of whatever idea that says this has to be hard and awful and bad. I got really clear over the last couple of weeks that I am not meant to try and be a minister and a producer at the same time. I cannot push spiritual and emotional buttons and technological buttons and remember which one I'm doing without accidentally pushing all my own buttons. So right now I want to say a big thank you to Chris and Andy Hofer, to Nina, to Clay, who is working today, for taking on the responsibility of doing all the tech work. This is a very different Sunday. I feel like I'm at least halfway back to sanctuary. And I'm so grateful to know that being part of a team, as opposed to thinking I have to do it all myself, works. It works so much better. You haven't seen me pull my hair out. Well, you wouldn't anyway, because I'd wait till I was muted and not on camera. But having some instructions, seeing where we can pull wisdom from, can be very helpful in times like this. And so I want you to know that the team that is all the ministers of the Center for Spiritual Living, especially home office, mad props to home office, our executive director, Sonia Byrne, our staff, Reverend Julie Lobato, who I just call J-Lo, so I can't remember her last name, Reverend Barbara Bew, all of them are helping so and being so wonderful about sending us tips and suggestions for things to try. So one of the wonderful people who is helping out right now is someone named Reverend Kathy Young, who works within the corporate field, helping people manage transitions. And she has a focus ministry called Intention Wise. And she shared with us this idea of VUCA. We are in a very VUCA time. It's fun to say, but it's actually just an, whatever you call it when you put the first letters of something together. I almost said an acronym, but that's not it. So VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Anyone think that that might describe what we're going through now? Especially all the people who are suddenly doing exams and trying to do classes online, trying to figure out how to work through Zoom, trying to look professional while their cats and dogs climb up on them because they want attention, not to mention all of their toddlers and everything else. Volatility means that things are changing quickly. The minute you think you've figured out how this all works, something else changes. Uncertainty. We don't know when the changes are coming or what they're going to look like. Complexity. Man, if you don't think it's complex to try and run Zoom from your living room while being a minister, or to try and figure out how to get all of your responsibilities done and talk clearly while wearing a mask, and I don't know what else you've run into, figure out how to be of service to your neighbors. It gets complex. It's not as easy as it used to be. And there is a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of ambiguity. We don't know what the right answers are yet. The only way to figure it out is to try them on, to try something. I think it was one of the Roosevelts who said, in the time of crisis, the worst thing to do is nothing. The best thing to do is the right thing to do. And so we go into our hearts and we look at what is the right thing to do. The right thing to do is peacefulness. The right thing to do is go back to source and figure out, can I get calm enough? Can I get centered and poised enough to think from my highest thought as opposed to fear? Now that can be kind of challenging because when we're in a VUCA situation, what happens is that limbic system, that lizard brain, gets triggered and we go into fight, flight, or freeze. We are biologically programmed to act as if the T-Rex is coming. When the truth is, we just don't know, what button to push next on this computer we're supposed to be using that we had to dust off in order to figure out how to turn it on. So what we need to do is get out of the limbic system somehow and get back to the frontal cortex, which is a higher order of thought. It's actual cognitive processing. There's a couple ways of doing that. One of them is meditation. One of that pulls us forward from our fear-based thinking and allows us to get back to who we really are, who we know we are, using the resources that we know we have. And Reverend Kathy shared with us that that takes effort. In a VUCA situation, getting back into constantly refocusing on a higher order of thought takes energy that you may not know you're using. And so I'll just remind you, I think I've probably said this before, that you are working at about 50% capacity if you are like the average American right now. Many of us are not thinking clearly. If you want proof of that, go read your Facebook page. Some of the stuff that we're talking about is just plain silly. No, 5G did not cause this. No, this is not a man-made virus. The professionals and the scientists, and we do believe in science, guys. We're religious scientists. We believe in science. The scientists prove that this is not a man-made virus. And so we can just let those fears fade away. We don't have to use energy struggling with those fears. It's a belief system that is working in us that says we are not safe. It's a belief system. And what do we do with belief systems that are no longer working for us? We let them go. They go back into the nothingness from which they came. We shine the light, and that old belief system, which is like a shadow, has no thinking involved in it. It absolutely must go back to the nothingness from which it came. It doesn't get to argue. When God says, let there be light, there will be light. And the divine speaking through you gets to shine that light as you see fit. And so we go back to the higher order of thought. We let go of all of that fear-based thinking. How do we do that? First of all, we have to be gentle with ourselves. No, we're probably not experiencing things like they are in India, where staying home might mean starving to death. We're not necessarily on the East Coast, although some of us are. I'm happy to know that we have people from Massachusetts joining us. We have lots of people from all over the place joining us. If you are experiencing those storms, if you're experiencing the earthquakes right now on top of everything else, know that we are lifting you in prayer. Know that we are with you in spirit. And if you're here in Arizona, we get to be grateful that we have a relatively easy crisis to go through. So what do we do to bring back thought? We do a reality check. Am I really in danger right now? Is there absolutely no food? I'm not just talking about the only thing in my house are ingredients and there's no real food that I could just reach in and grab. That's not starving. That's me not wanting to cook. And I don't mean there's ingredients, but none I really feel like eating, and none of them are chocolate. That's just me, again, saying I don't feel like cooking when actually I'm perfectly capable of it. I'm not in any physical danger right now. I have a roof over my head. If you have a roof over your head and you're not afraid of losing it right now, you can do the reality check that says you're not actually in a ton of danger. I remember Sally Kasner at one point talked about when she was feeling like she was lacking something. She would stop for a moment, go within and say, what is it that I absolutely need right now that I don't already have? And I've been using that. I don't know if Sally remembers saying that, but it was passed down to me as if she had said it. That quick reality check makes all the difference. The other thing you can do was actually embedded in that last process. Ask yourself an open-ended question. If you're dealing with somebody else who is in fear, asking open-ended questions, meaning any question that cannot be answered with a yes or no. Open-ended questions absolutely bring us back into our higher functioning, because that's the part of the brain that answers open-ended questions, that requires that creativity and that sense of thinking something through. What are open-ended questions that might work? The Byron Katie work, also known as the work. Questions like, are you sure this is true? Does it serve you if this is not true? How can you know if this is true? There's also the option of asking yourself, what else is going on here? Yes, I'm in fear right now. Yes, I'm resenting that I ran out of ice cream or whatever. But what else is going on here? And then you get into the questions about, what am I really hungry for? What is it I'm trying not to feel? And so then the next question is, what are the opportunities in this moment? All of those are open-ended questions that will allow you to step out of fear and back into your higher thinking. It is within that higher thinking that we can go back to taking the instruction manuals we have for our lives that we've been using as religious scientists for quite some time. Going back to those instruction manuals, remembering to go and read the great teachers, remembering to go and read the mystics, if we call them musicians or poets or any of it. Go listen to that music, dance it out, get back into your body somehow. But first you have to challenge that fear. First you have to challenge that knee-jerk runaway need. I promise you there is no T-Rex out to get you. You are safe in your home in this moment. And if you're not, I will remind you that the Center for Spiritual Living's phone number is at the Center for Spiritual Living's website. And hopefully you also have my cell phone number, which is 928-830-9443. I have a fund that will help you keep your roof over your head. The board has been very, very generous about making sure that we're okay. Any member of the Center for Spiritual Living can call me and dip into those funds. So, something else that Reverend Kathy Young shared with us is this idea of, we used to have what was called Lone Ranger leadership. It was that we would hire, or businesses would hire, some celebrity CEO to come in and fix things. They would ride in on Hi-Ho Silver, and they would come in and they would fix everything. Except it doesn't work anymore. The research for the past 7 years has said the Lone Ranger leadership is no longer considered anywhere near effective. If I were to come in and try and fix everything like the Lone Ranger, I would just be making it worse. If you think about it, the Lone Ranger never has to share him or herself with the people they're helping. They're always on a mat, wearing a mask. That was part of the Lone Ranger mystique. Like, you couldn't flip and tell exactly who he was every single time, because a half mask doesn't do anything. Okay, that's just my personal judgment. They would come in and they would shoot things up and force things into a whole new way of being, and basically kill whoever was being scapegoated, or arrest them, I hope. And then they would ride away as if that had changed things. When I worked with abused children, what I learned really quickly was, when a parent shoved a kid at me and said, fix them, what I was to do was sit down with the kid and say, you know you're not a problem, right? You know you're a good kid, right? Because I didn't need to fix the kid. It was the dynamic of the whole that needed some healing and adjusting. And so often I would look at the kid and say, how close are you to 18? Don't worry, linear time is your friend. And then I'd go back to the parents and say, how are we setting this kid up to fail? How are you allowing your projection to drive you nuts? And how can we help you heal yourself such that the kid doesn't need to take on your projections, and so everybody gets to live happily, so that when the kid turns 18, they don't just disappear. They have become friends with the family. They have all come together and learned a new way of being in the world. That was my job, not to fix any one thing. If I had come in like a Lone Ranger and said the kid is the problem, I'd have made it worse. Because whatever the next kid was in the line of kids would become the problem child if I took out the problem child. So what is your problem child living in your house with you, where you may or may not be with other people? Who are you making the problem child in your world right now? Is it your eating? Is it your spending online? Is it living via Netflix? I mean, what are you going to do if you run out of Netflix? Has anyone watched all of Netflix yet? I think I'm getting close. Who are you making the problem? There's another open-ended question. What are you projecting out there that is the real problem? And if you're making yourself the problem, how can you make yourself see the opportunity to learn to love yourself better? And so we go back to those sets of instructions that we know work. We call this the Science of Mind textbook. And within the Science of Mind textbook, we look at how is it that we are creating this world that we choose to live in. I am lucky that I can listen to Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson before our service starts, because he's in Baltimore. There's a time change. And so I get to listen to him be wise. And he talked this morning about the library of your life instead of a library. What are the books you've written about your life? What are the genres? As he was speaking about the different genres, the different books in his history, I was thinking about, as he was speaking about those, I was thinking, and who wrote those books? It might be you, but it might read like Stephen King wrote it. Are you writing a horror story about your history? Is it possible that, yes, it was scary, or yes, it was difficult, and you stopped reading in the middle of the book. In many mainstream Christian churches I have gone to in my life, they stopped reading at the crucifixion. They didn't keep reading to find the resurrection. And that's why I couldn't hang with them, because they missed the point. My personal belief. I don't know that that is actually in our textbook. That's my personal belief. You got to read the rest of the book. You got to come back after the intermission, as they would say in theater, and watch Act 2. So right now, we're in the intermission. Right now, we're all alone, maybe in our homes, or as Iyanla Vanzant used to say, alone in our heads without adult supervision. That can be a problem sometimes, guys. Sometimes it's very freeing. But right now, we are in the intermission, and we get to write the next act of this particular play. We get to write the next chapter of our lives and make that the new beginning of the book. So I'm going to draw on the wisdom of Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson and say with him that I invite you to write the introduction to this half of your life, wherever you may be in your life right now. I invite you to write a new introduction. And in his case, he said something to the effect of, joy happens all around him. There was always laughter in Raymond's life. In mine, I would say that there is, in this second half of my life, an even deeper choice to go into looking at what my beliefs are that are serving me and those that are not. And so there is a dedication to the archetype of student, to the archetype of service and servant, with living with a servant's heart and giving from the overflow. And I wonder what your new forward or introduction to your book will read like. Reverend Dr. Kathy Ann Lewis shared with us that we don't need to go back to the old normal. As a matter of fact, we probably shouldn't. There's a whole bunch of stuff floating around out there online saying that the old normal is not something most people want to go back to. It might have been very comfortable for us. I was pretty comfortable with the old normal, and aware that it was a huge number of America that was living on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. There's a large chunk of our population that is living in poverty with no way out. No matter how much they practice these principles, they have a harder time than those of us who are born into privilege, the privilege of being white, or the privilege of being heterosexual and cisgendered and fully physically able. There are other people that just didn't have that. Now, who we are, what we are, religious scientists with an instruction manual that will help us get through this time, to me, that invokes what I've learned to call Rule 303. It's a military thing. It says if you have the means, then you have the responsibility. We have the means to create a new normal. And that means we have the responsibility to create a world that works for everyone, not just those few people in our inner circle. We have the means to go to our knowing of the creative process and use it. And so today I'm going to end with some words from Sermon by the Sea, which was one of the last talks that our founder Ernest Holmes gave at a place called Asilomar, where they went every year to do a summer conference. Sermon by the Sea, you're used to hearing about from me as find me the person who is for something and against nothing, and I'll show you the Savior of my soul. Well, he does go on, and he says that it is that person who is using science of mind. And he goes on to write, you are religious scientists, our ministers, our teachers, our practitioners, our laymen, who we would call members. You find me 1,000 people in this world who know what religious science is and use it and live it as it is. And all myself live to see a new world, a new heaven and a new earth. Here, there is a cosmic power wrapped up in a cosmic consciousness and purposiveness that is equal to the vision which looses it. Our vision is a world that works for everyone. Our vision is the global vision. We have learned that it's very easy to get 1,000 people together online. there's a group of ministers that is together online in a few days. It became 5,000 people from all over the religious map, from all over the world, choosing to be together, to recognize our oneness, to come together within the one mind, not physically, because we can't, not right now. But we come together in the name of love. Our ministers, our teachers, our practitioners, the imams, the rabbis, all of us, including you, the lay people and the people who are practitioners with a little p. We know how to use religious science, and so we choose to do that now. I promise you, the old rules are written, but we can transcend them, as Darius sang to us. Darius and Celia gave us a wonderful set of rules. Transcend the old rules. Recognize when we're just going with an old belief system that no longer works in this world. And so I invite you into prayer with me as we choose to wrap ourselves in that cosmic power, which is united with a cosmic consciousness and a sense of purpose. It is equal to the vision that looses it. It is the one mind that is now at work. And so I ask you to join me now in this consciousness, which is cosmic, which is Christed, which is our Buddha nature, which is Krishna, which is Atman, coming through us into the world right now and choosing to be fully present at a physical level. The divine is here and now as us in the world. We are both blessed and the blessing because what we know is how to use creative law. What we know is that there is only one mind, and we know the laws and the rules by which it works. And so I celebrate this day. I celebrate that we have gotten a whole new sheet of paper in which to write the book of life, our individual lives and the greater life, capital L, life. And so in this moment, I write a life of truth. I write a book of life that is based in our oneness, that is based in love, which is the truth between all souls and always has been, which is written by Spirit through me and through all of my brothers and sisters in the Christ consciousness, through all of the other Buddhas and Krishnas and Muhammads that are just writing down and allowing Spirit to work through them to write a whole new Quran, an updated level, all of us together. I celebrate that this is what Spirit is up to today, will be up to for the rest of our lives. And today is the day it began. I bless it all. I give thanks for Spirit being Spirit, has always been writing through us, and now we choose to write a bit more clearly, with a great more joy, a great more peace, because it is Spirit writing the book. And so we just let it flow. We let it be. So it is.